Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How to Build a College List at Home During COVID-19, presented by Cappex's College Admissions Advising Group. Thank you for being here for this pre-recorded webinar. We have a lot to get through, but we'll do it as quickly as possible so that you can get on to list building. My name is Tim Brennan, and I will be your host for this. I'm part of the College Advising Services team here at Cappex and have been at the company for almost 3 years. So here's our agenda for today. First, we'll ask the question, why build a college list now while you're stuck at home? Next, we'll tackle the concept of selectivity in admissions and why you can't ignore it. We'll spend most of our time on getting clear about what matters to you, and then we'll end with a definition of success and some next steps. So let's start with why now is a good time to begin building a college list. Even if this were not the age of coronavirus and you were not stuck inside for large portions of the day, now is still a good time for juniors to be building their college lists. This is because list building is really just about prioritizing what is important to you in a college education and experience. This is a huge decision, an expensive decision, and you don't want to take it lightly. That being said, nothing you do during this early stage is a final list. You'll be making decisions about where to and where not to apply right up until the deadlines, likely. But what you really want to do now is understand what you want and what colleges out there have it. It can seem like a daunting task, but really it's not. You just need to dive in. Many students already have an idea of the college they want to go to, or at least one they've dreamed about, which is great. You may ultimately go there. But also usually this college represents some kind of dream scenario. Again, it's not bad to dream. It's just that you also need to have a healthy backup plan. For students, sometimes the hardest part of list building is finding non-dream schools that fit their needs and would make them happy. This isn't because there are not great schools out there. There are. It's just that you may not have thought about them yet. So one way to start tackling the list building process is to think about exactly why that school you've been dreaming of is the one for you. Is it the prestige? Is it the location? Is it a vibe you got when you visited campus? If you can pinpoint the real reason for your love, it will help you find other schools that also fit the bill. But let me reiterate, resist the urge to focus only on dream schools. And don't just substitute one dream school for another as you expand your list. Well, Stanford is my dream school, but I guess I'd also like Harvard. You're more than welcome to apply to both, but don't make it all about dreams. Reality needs an even bigger place on your list. By the way, this goes even if you think you have amazing grades, test scores, and extracurriculars. The most highly selective schools can fill 5 times their current enrollment with students who are every bit as qualified to go there. That's why everyone, no matter who you are, needs a balanced list. Okay, since selectivity is on the minds of many students, let's start here. Every applicant is going to run into selectivity issues when applying to college. There are simply more smart, accomplished, qualified kids than there are spaces at the most selective schools. Princeton likes to report that it rejects almost 90% of kids with a 1,500 or higher on the SAT. Similar schools report that they reject an equally high percentage of valedictorians. No matter what level you are academically, you are likely not going to get into every school you apply to. You should make peace with this now and don't look at it as a mark of failure or shame. It's simply a numbers game. And of course, it's easier to feel grounded about rejection when you have a list of schools, great schools, that you actually care about and want to go to, that are varied in their selectivity rates. So let's look at how that manifests itself with a college list. We recommend that students build a list across 4 categories of selectivity. It used to be 3 types, but with competition for the highest ranked schools so fierce, we've added this 4th. Likely schools, we don't call them safety anymore because it might hurt some schools' feelings, are schools that are very likely to accept you based on your academics, namely GPA and test scores. Target schools are schools that will likely accept you, but might not. These are schools where you are at or above their average academic metrics. Reach schools probably won't accept you because you fall below their averages, but they do have people at the school below average, and you can be one of them. When you crack a reach school, it's likely because an extracurricular or really inspiring essay put you over the top. Far reach schools are those where you are really at the lower end of their academic scale. But again, there are kids who get in, and you might be one of them. It's just that the chances are low. We advise students to apply to about 8 to 10 schools across these 4 categories. So how do you know what schools fall into which selectivity categories for you? Most colleges don't publish much about their GPAs, which makes it hard to use that stat, but they do publish test scores pretty consistently, which is a good way when considering where you fall. In the far left column on this slide, you'll see a couple of stats for SAT and ACT scores. These represent the middle 50% of scores for the first year class at the college. In this case, this is the University of Texas at Dallas. At this school, 25% of the incoming class had an SAT score of 12, 10, or below, or an ACT score of 25 or below. And another 25% of the class had an SAT score of 14, 30, or higher, or 31 or higher on the ACT. Everyone else was in that middle 50 percentile. And although schools don't report the true average, you can roughly calculate it by taking the midpoint of that 50 percentile range. In this case, it would be 1320 SAT and 28 ACT. We can't be sure of that midpoint, but it's a good bet. Now you might be saying standardized tests are nonsense and more schools are going test optional, and you're right on both counts. But most colleges are still using standardized tests, so they are a good measure of the incoming stats of the class, regardless of the rest of your academic stats. So now categorizing against these ranges is fairly straightforward. If your score is safely above the 75th percentile for the school, then it is a likely school for you. If you fall between the 50th to 75th percentile range, then this is a target school for you. They will likely accept you, but they might not. Do you fall in the 25th to 50th percentile range? Then this is a reach school. In our example, this would be a 25 to a 27. And below the 25th percentile range, or 24 or under, then this is a far reach, no matter what your GPA or extracurriculars. And one note about a certain select group of schools there on the right, they are always a far reach and should occupy that status on your list. The 16 schools listed here get so many applications from kids that have really high scores that nobody is a likely or a target for any of them. Predicting success at these schools is just too volatile, and so you should never assume you are getting into any of them, no matter who you are. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about the truly important stuff. How to build a college list by getting clear on what matters to you. Knowing what you want across 4 key elements of selection is really the key to list building. In no particular order of importance, as that varies by student, they are academics, or what you want to study in college, social fit, a broad category that includes factors that make for a good feeling, post-college, one that many students ignore but that is actually critical, namely, how does the college support you in your future goals? And 4th, financial cost. What can you and your family afford to pay? So let's look at each of these in a bit of detail. Let's start with academics, since it's the primary reason for going to college in the first place, to study and get a degree. What to study? That is the question, and one that you should spend some time trying to answer if you have not done so already. Why? Because if you don't know what you want to study, how could you pick a college? Even if you're undecided, which many students are, you should take the time to think about what is of interest right now. It may change in college. In fact, it will change in college for many students, even if they think they know what they want right now. So take some time to think this through and then let that decision process easier. When a school asks you why you want to enroll with them, you can use the academic program as a reason, rather than saying that, the campus is pretty. This is especially important with highly selective schools that want to know specifically why their school is right for you. If what you want to study in college is fairly common, then you won't have a hard time finding many schools that have that area of study. Physics, for example, is a subject that many colleges have majors in, although not all. Start exploring schools that have physics and the types of specialties they may offer. If you have a more specific major that you want to study, like zoology, then you'll have fewer schools to look at, but you'll also have time to get familiar with what each one offers. Regardless of whether your intended course of study is common or rare, look through the course catalogs at schools that interest you. Do these courses seem like what you'd want to take? Also, check out whether the courses are taught in large lecture halls or with small class sizes. Are there internships available for students in that field? Is this a university with a grad degree in the same field, and do undergrads get to participate in research studies? These are the types of things to consider as you explore a potential area of study. If you've got a common area of study, then you'll still likely have plenty of choices before going through the social fit component, which comes next. If your area of study is not so common, then you've probably already narrowed down quite a bit. Same goes if you have a sub-area of study within a broader one, like, say, applied physics. Regardless of how common your area of study is, keep in mind the selectivity levels that we went over earlier. Your list of potential schools should include more than just reaches and far reaches. It's easy to fall in love with programs at the most highly selective schools, but there are fabulous programs at schools across every selectivity level. Okay, with the area of study in mind, you can turn to the second area of focus for college list building, social fit. This is a broad category that covers a number of different elements, but they all speak to how everything beyond academics contributes to your college experience. After all, if college were just about academics, you could stay home and learn remotely, kind of like what's going on right now. There are many components of social fit, but we focus on three big ones: geography, extracurriculars, and campus life. For geography, there are actually a few considerations, but perhaps the biggest one is, how close or far away from home do you want to be? Do you want to be able to drive home for an important family birthday party or to attend a younger sibling's big game? Then you'll likely want to be within driving distance. Do you want to experience a new area of the country, like the East Coast, if you've been living out west? Then flying will be necessary and you'll come home less often. The second part of geography speaks to the campus itself. Do you want to be on an urban campus, or would you prefer to be right outside a city in a suburban one? Or maybe you want to be in a truly rural setting away from it all. Visiting each type is the best way to get a feel for how they differ, which hopefully you'll be able to do once the COVID-19 pandemic recedes. But in the meantime, think of similar places you've been and project. Did you like being out in the country, in the big city? With regards to extracurriculars, most schools have lots of them, but you'll want to check to make sure what you love to do is well represented. And if you're into sports, as about 50% of college kids are, you'll want to see what they offer. Keep in mind that NCAA sports are typically only for recruited athletes, but there are still many opportunities for sports. One thing you might not know is that many colleges have club teams that sit between the varsity and intramural levels. They often require tryouts, and the teams actually travel to take on other colleges. And finally, perhaps most difficult to pinpoint is the concept of campus life. This is the general vibe of the place. Does everyone prep for the big game on Saturday morning, followed by a night on fraternity row? Or are the social interactions more scholarly? Does the school have a thriving arts program, or does it have a little bit of everything? It's harder to get a feel for this online, but you can do it by reading the student newspaper and calendar of events on the college's website. With your social fit preferences determined, you might have a tighter set of criteria to narrow your list against. You might decide that physics is for you, but within a drive of home and ideally on a suburban campus. Keep in mind, though, that not every college is going to have everything you want, which may cause you to prioritize even further. And finally, if you want to get a non-data-driven view of what life is like on campus, simply Google, "What's it like to go to College X?" You'll be surprised how many great ways there are to get a sense of campus life this way. Okay, the third and often forgotten consideration point is what happens post-college. This can seem like a really long time from now, but it's actually not that far away. If you plan correctly, the college you choose will lead to a good path after you graduate. When we think about post-college life, we consider job prospects, job proximity, and grad school. So let's consider each one. For most people, the end of the college years means the start of full-time work, and your college degree is likely your biggest accomplishment to date and the thing that will attract future employers. So consider, How much do employers value a degree in your field of study from College X? The most effective way to check this is to dig into how much on-campus recruiting happens at each school. When recruiters come to campus, by definition, it means they are looking specifically for students from your school. This is a lot different than applying to job boards after graduation and competing with everyone else. On-campus recruiting really separates the good from the very good when it comes to colleges. Hirers are not coming to places where they feel the students are just so-so. So part of your research into this area should focus on the Career Resource Center on campus. Job proximity is another thing to consider. Most colleges have regional rather than national reputations. Your degree from Michigan State means more in the Midwest than it does in New York City. Even a top-tier school like the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor holds more weight in Chicago than it does in Los Angeles. So unless you are going to go to a truly nationally recognized school, you should consider whether you'll want to work near the university you attend, because that's likely where many jobs will be. Beyond jobs, your college friends will also likely be local too. This isn't to say that you can't take any degree anywhere. Of course you can. But when you're just starting out, you may find yourself staying in the region of your alma mater. And finally, consider whether grad school is in your future. Like employers, grad schools are judging the education you've gotten. What's the academic reputation of your area of study within the graduate school world? How many students go directly to grad school after college? How many go to professional programs like law school or business school? These are some things to consider as you build your college list. Okay, and finally, the fourth element to consider when building your college list is the financial fit. Specifically, what can you afford for college, and do the colleges you're targeting fall in that price range? If you don't select the right colleges before applying, you may be disappointed later when aid letters come back that don't work for you and your family. There's a lot of nuance to this area, and we're not going to tackle it all here, but we can at least get started. If you have not done so already, you need to have a conversation with your parents about how your family plans to pay for college. You may be expecting your parents to foot the whole bill, or you may consider yourself completely self-sufficient. But most colleges see you and your family as tied financially. The process starts when your parents fill out the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. This is the government determining how much your family should be able to pay based on its income and assets. The result of these inputs is the expected family contribution, or EFC. This is what colleges expect your family can contribute, and everything else becomes your, quote, demonstrated need. Now, more often than not, the government will expect your parents to pay more than they might think is reasonable. So before you make a final college list, consult with them about exactly what they expect to contribute to your college education. One way you can get an idea of what your EFC will be without filling out the FAFSA is to visit a college's website and find their net price calculator. It will tell you for that college what your net price would be to attend if you were accepted. You may be surprised that this will vary by school, with some able to contribute more to defray the cost than others. Once you have a good idea of what kind of financial resources are available to you from your family, you can think of how that translates to the college list. We advise families to think of themselves as one of three types of buyer: a need-based buyer, a merit-based buyer, or a full-pay buyer. Let's consider each. Need-based buyers don't have a lot of family income or assets, and so have a low expected family contribution. It may seem like in-state schools with in-state tuitions are the best bet for need-based buyers, and this is often the case since in-state tuition is typically a good value. But you shouldn't limit your search to in-state schools only. High-performing students can apply to schools that cover 100% of demonstrated need with no loans. Some of the most selective schools in the country do this. Plus, they are need blind, which means they don't know your financial situation when reading your application. If you get in, you're covered for 100% of your need. For example, at the University of Chicago, if your family makes less than $125K, your tuition expense is exactly zero. That's a great deal if you can get it. Now, if FAFSA says that your family can pay a substantial amount for college, but maybe your parents really can't or won't agree to it, then you want to seek out merit aid. Merit aid is money awarded to students regardless of whether they show need or not. These are schools that want you to come and are willing to reduce their tuition for you to matriculate. The way to maximize merit aid is to focus on schools where you exceed their academic averages. But be aware, most of the nation's highly selective schools do not offer merit aid to anyone. They have too many top students, and so they save their money for those who need it. And finally, if your family plans to pay full price for college, you may be able to use this to your advantage. Many schools are need aware, which means that they do know whether you need financial aid to attend their school or not. Students who can pay full fare are often accepted at higher rates than those that need school aid. Schools don't like to talk about this much, but it's true. Again, not all schools are need aware, but many are, and being able to pay makes you a more attractive candidate. Oh, and a note about third-party scholarships. You can and should pursue them, but realize that the most money for college is going to come from the colleges themselves in the form of need aid or merit aid. Okay, let's recap. There are 4 elements to really consider as you build your college list: academics, social fit, post-college plans, and financial cost. Hopefully, you've got a little bit more info on each now to use as you start to explore colleges that meet your goals and needs. So just one more thing to quickly consider before we wrap up: defining what success looks like to you. Make sure that as you build your college list, you are doing what is right for you and not what is right for others. It's easy to follow the crowd, especially when it comes to prestige. Resist the urge to do this and realize that there is no single perfect college or perfect path. There are many ways to find success. Defining what success means to you can help you narrow your college choices even more. Consider a few different strategies. If success to you means getting into a prestigious or far-reach school, then you may want to apply to more schools than average. There's just so much chance at the very top when so many kids with great stats are applying to the same places that you'll want to place a few more bets. That is provided you can handle the extra application work. The most prestigious schools also require the most supplemental essays. If success means getting the lowest cost possible, then you want to maximize your need-based and merit-based aid. Think of yourself as a free agent searching for a great contract. What schools will value you most? Will those schools meet your needs? Seek out the generous and drop your prestige requirements. Finally, maybe college is just a stop on the way to grad school. If you want to be a doctor, the most important element in a college isn't prestige, but how well it prepares you to apply to medical school. Can you get good grades at the school? Does it send its kids to solid graduate schools? If so, then getting into a school like this may be how you define success. Okay, now for a few next steps. Spending time learning about colleges online is a great use of time while you are in quarantine, but it's not just about learning for you. It's also about showing colleges that you are interested in them. Without school visits or campus tours to run, colleges may not know that you want them, and they want to know that you want them. Many practice something called demonstrated interest, where your level of enthusiasm for a school, as measured by, say, being on the mailing list and opening their emails, can play a role in whether you get accepted or not. It's true. Colleges want kids who want them, so show them. Okay, it may be a bit of a plug here, but I just want to make sure that you know that Cappex Admissions Advising helps one-on-one with all of this important work. We take a really aspirational but also pragmatic approach to building the college list and in doing every other part of the process. Our service focuses on 4 main areas: building that list, crafting the personal statement, completing each application, and maximizing financial offers that come in post-acceptance. As part of our service, we offer parents a free 30-minute consultation to get an idea of your family's unique situation and how we can help. You can be on the call too if you want, but you need to have a parent present. If you want them to sign up, simply have them visit cappexadvising.com/schedule-free-consultation.html. Okay, that's it. Thanks again for being part of this webinar. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me directly at the email you see on the screen. And good luck building your college list.